Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough. Today's requested review comes from my fellow reviewer, the Nostalgia Kid.
Hey everyone, it's the Halloween season again, and I can't miss the occasion to celebrate by torturing myself with another god-awful movie.
Today we're going to be taking our second look at one of the weaker things relating to Nightmare on Elm Street, the comic adaptation of the sixth film, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Before we look at the comic, let's talk about why the movie wasn't that good. The movie had an interesting concept of revealing more about Freddy's past, but a majority of that is revealed near the end of the movie, while the first two-thirds are spent on bland characters in a clinic for troubled teenagers. And much like Dream Child, not a whole lot of kills, and an overabundance of Freddy acting like a goof the entire time.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too!
It was also one of those gimmicky horror movies at the time that forced 3D to make it seem cool, which was only brought down even further by the incredibly lackluster special effects. Rightfully so, this was not the final movie to end on like they anticipated, as New Nightmare came around and brought some well-needed scares back to the series. So how do you turn a crappy movie into a comic? Could it possibly be better than the movie it's supposed to be representing? Well, let's find out. This is Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. I actually don't have a physical copy of the comic with me, so sorry about that. Brought to us by the folks over at Innovation Comics, our first issue has this mess of a cover. I mean, it's well drawn, but it's just so cluttered looking. You have Freddy posing in front of this massive glove, which is hogging up a majority of the frame, while standing in front of a sign for Springwood with population count switched out with death count, and the bus from the movie behind the sign. Come on, guys, you want to put more stuff on the cover while you're at it? The story proper begins with this guy on a plane. He asks if he could switch seats because he feels unsettled, not helped by this little creepy girl who wanders over to him. He's gotta make you help him, because you're the last. I'm bored. Let's see what some of the other aisles of the plane are like.
There's someone on the way. Something.
The lady sitting next to him flies through the roof of the plane, and then he drops through the floor. It's not fair! I was almost out! Only one page in, and a character already wants out of the story. Great. The guy lands in a house thinking it was just a nightmare until he sees that the house is actually in the middle of a tornado. And dear God, this artwork does not do Freddy any favors. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too! The guy lands on Elm Street and then proceeds to roll down a hill. At least it's condensed to 3 quick panels, shorter than it is in the actual movie. He stumbles upon a ticket booth for a bus, which then hits him, driven by Freddy. No screaming while the bus is in motion! And apparently this issue comes with the titular subtitle, Little John in Slumberland. As Freddy comes to an abrupt stop, the guy is flung to the real world. Since Freddy is low on energy and has something big planned for later, he lets the guy go. As the dude is flung between the two worlds, he hits his head on a rock and develops amnesia. Oh, I see. This is the part where he wanders into New Kelp City and takes on a bubble-hating biker gang led by Ray Liotta. We then cut over to this woman, Maggie, having a nightmare as she's woken up by her stepmom visiting her for her birthday. And as you can see, she doesn't really have the best relationship with her. If you called once in a while, let me know if you're alive. I wouldn't have to surprise you. Mom, please, I turned 28 today, not 14. You don't have to surprise me. You're never too old for surprises. You had that dream again, didn't you? You only look this tired when you have that dream. That's not true. I always look tired. You can't just ignore it. 12 years of therapy is hardly ignoring it. When you've had the same dream for 20 years, you get used to it. I wish it would go away. I have to be at the shelter at 9 o'clock. The shelter. You should be a psychiatrist by now with your own practice, not slaving away at some home for delinquents. It happens to be a place for kids with problems. I'm proud of what I do there. We then get a taste of the body count. I mean the main cast. Spencer, a stoner son of some billionaire. I like to think that he's some kind of dickwad relative of Daniel Clamp from Gremlins 2. Tracy, a girl with fighting experience who doesn't like her personal space being invaded, and as we'll see later, Carlos, a guy with a hearing aid who has mommy issues. Also at the shelter is this therapist, wise old man type named Doc, who for some reason is always drawn wearing a Cosby sweater. Maggie begins talking about her dream problems to him as he launches into some spiel about dream demons. Give the artwork this, they at least made them look less like demonic sperm like they did in the movie. These 3D glasses and X-ray specs are just a different way to see stuff. The kids have to see their problems before they face them. Like it? It's new. Those ugly suckers are ancient dream demons. They're trying to wipe out the line between dreams and reality, turning the world into one big nightmare. They're certainly doing a pretty good job so far. Doc also mentions they enlist the help of some kind of evil, twisted figure. Oh gee, I wonder who they could be talking about. Maggie is called in to check out the guy with amnesia from earlier, who's given the surname John Doe. He goes on about what he recalls from his dream and the I'm the last one stuff, as Maggie reassures him that they'll take care of him. That night, John tries to stay awake and... Okay, that image is too good. It's like they predicted the none of my business meme. Both John and Maggie fall asleep and end up dreaming, Maggie having the same nightmare again, and John comes face to face with that dream girl. I told you he'd make you help him. Help? Help who? Tell me! She walks away as John turns into the guy from the Take On Me music video in the background. I'll also give them this. John walking in midair looks less silly here than it did in the movie. As he sleepwalks, he comes across the physical manifestation of his memories in a straitjacket. He's then jolted awake by Officer Lionel Richie here, who he ends up knocking out the window. And for some reason in this bottom panel, he looks like he's giant. Maggie deduces that John's dreams are linked to Springwood, a lot like her own, so she decides that she'll take him there so they'll try and retrace his steps and get his memories back. Kelly, I'm taking the van for this afternoon. Have you seen Spencer, Carlos, and Tracy? Not since last night. Bye! I just love how that was structured. She answers the guy's question and then she just throws in the casual bye at the end of it. Reminds me of another certain famous movie exchange.
My favorite customer. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.
They roll into Springwood as Freddy watches with delight, seeing his plans begin to unravel. John dreams they almost hit that nightmare girl, as it's revealed that the trio of teens have stowed away in the van, and issue 1 ends with them hopping out at some carnival in town. 4 troubled teens and their counselor have stepped off the map known as reality. Their next stop, the Twilight Zone. Hey, mister, leave the corny jokes to me, alright? Issue 2's cover depicts a massive Freddy cranking up speakers to high volume while Carlos's ears bleed at the bottom. The story picks up with, whoa, better looking artwork. Alright, better start than issue 1. Maggie tells the 3 to go back to the clinic as John wants to do some further investigation. No kids. What? A town fair and there's no kids? I know the lack of kids in Springwood is because of Freddy and all, but couldn't you technically make the argument that maybe it's a school day? Also, the subtitle for this issue is Dead Kids on the Block. Hey, whoa now. We already have the Slash Street Boys. We don't need no copycats, okay? The teens try to call for a ride, but they're soon approached by a crazed Roseanne Barr asking if they'll be her children before she's stopped by Tom Arnold. Would you like to come home with me? It's been so long since we had children in the house. So long. But this time it'll be different. My perfectly adorable little babies. This time I'll hide you, and he won't find you. Ethel, you know they bring him. I want my children back. See what you did? We're Twin Peaking here. Okay, first the line about Twilight Zone and now this. Stop making everything that these kids say be some kind of quip. Also, what the hell happened to them on this bottom panel? Carlos now looks like Superman, Tracy looks like Reese Witherspoon, and Spencer looks like a messed up version of Prince Charming from Shrek. They try to split in the van as Maggie and John come across this chalk drawing of Freddy, letting them know that he's watching them. Maggie tries to write it off as imaginary and kids just drawing what they see in their nightmares, but they seek more answers in this abandoned Springwood high school. I will admit, the little heart on the tree with Glenn loves Nancy, that's a cute Easter egg. Props to them on that one. They come across this loon teaching a lesson about Freddy to the classroom of nobody. Wait, what does it say on his chalkboard? Garfield, Stuff, Madison, Freddy kills Menudo, crap happens, BK was here. BK is in Burger King? Whatever. Dr. Scientist spits out one very vital clue in all of this as he reveals that Freddy apparently had a child. Here's where they took his child away. Taking his child to put into a town orphanage added a critical variable to an already unstable status quo. Back with these guys, they've been driving around and it seems they're going in a complete circle. We're back here again? There's no way out!
There's no way out of this film.
At least with the movie, we got 2 separate scenes of them driving around and coming to the same spot. Here, unless you've seen the movie, you just kind of have to take their word that they've been driving around for a while. They look for a place to sleep for the night, and uh-oh spaghettios, they go into the infamous Nightmare House, which has a red roof instead of green this time, or maybe that's the lighting from the fire. Carlos goes to sleep and begins dreaming about his abusive mother, wringing his ear out with the Q-tip of death and popping out his hearing aid in the process. As his mama turns into Freddy, he's then dropped into Freddy's famous boiler room, and he gives him a hearing aid that is incredibly sensitive, starting by dropping some pins to the dreaded nails on a chalkboard, which ultimately makes his head explode. Ear today, gone tomorrow! Wow, it's somehow lamer here than it was in the movie.
Nice hearing from you, Carlos.
John and Maggie go to get some answers at the orphanage in town, but the lady running things is just as off her rocker as the teacher from earlier. Do you remember me? Of course I do, my boy. I remember every one of my children, especially you. What a pretty little girl you were. And I remember you and you and you. I remember all my children. Maggie finds a drawing initialed 1K Kruger, and John thinks that might be him, that he might be Freddy's child. It's me. I'm his kid, and that's why I'm still alive. He's playing some sick game with me. He is dead, and you are not his child. How do you know? The woman remembered me. She was also talking to people who weren't really there, so do you really think she's that much of a reliable source? Also, John, have you considered the fact that it might not be you? I mean, the world is a big place. You're not the only person in it. It's not like you have any concrete proof at this point that it's you.
Why must you always be the focal point of attention? Why can't you just be? Why can't you live?
Tracy goes to find Maggie and John since she can't find Carlos as Spencer begins tripping out in front of the TV. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Questions?
Yeah, what are you on? Looks like a frying pan and some eggs to me.
Freddy then sucks Spencer into the TV like it's some kind of acid trip, even though the highest thing Spencer's ever done is weed, not LSD. Tracy makes it to them, somehow, and she tells them that they can't find Carlos, and later Spencer, who is not in the chair like when she left. They split up, like this is Scooby-Doo or something, as Maggie searches the basement. She ends up knocking down a brick wall by pulling a string and revealing Freddy's torture room, a scene that was actually cut from the film. As for Spencer, he's being attacked by Freddy in a video game with these cartoon versions of his dad saying, "Be like me, be a man." All the while, Spencer is being bounced around in real life. John and Tracy work their way into the dream world and try to stop Freddy by ripping the controller out of his hand. Forgot the remote! That's odd. This is the part of the movie where Freddy whips out the Powerglove.
Get out of here now, Tracy! Now!
Hey, you forgot the Powerglove!
And again, forgot the remote is what they went with in the movie's original work print, so maybe they just went off of that instead. Though I must ask, what's a remote control going to do for a console that has specific controllers designed for it? Screw it, whatever, it's a nightmare. Freddy's domain, he can do what he wants. Spencer is killed in the game, and his soul is collected by Freddy just like with Carlos. And it seems that John is still asleep, so now Freddy comes face to face with him while parachuting out of the falling house from the beginning.
You think I'm your daddy? You're wrong!
But you let me live!
Only long enough to bring my daughter back. She's gonna take me to a whole new playground.
Freddy kills John by cutting his parachute straps and laying out a platform of spikes that impale him. Can't believe I'm saying this again, but less stupid here than it was in the movie. John's soul is absorbed into Freddy, who is now strong enough to work his way into Maggie's head, ending off issue 2. Issue 3's cover shows a giant Freddy playing a video game on what looks like either a Neo Geo or Sega Master System, something that happened in the previous issue.
Great graphics.
Wouldn't it make more sense to have the cover be Freddy and Maggie fighting or something, since that actually happens in this issue? Issue 3, subtitled Memories Like the Killings in My Head, reveals that Maggie is actually Freddy's daughter. Her birth name was Catherine, and Freddy killed his wife once she found out that he was a murderer. And uncomfortably, Maggie is now wearing the little girl's wardrobe.
They took you away from me, but I made them pay. I took all their children away from them, but that's over now.
Like I said at the beginning of the review, I have nothing wrong with the idea of Freddy having a family because it gives more dimension and stuff that we haven't seen with his character before. But the thing is, we have had to deal with such boring crap up to this point that it kind of feels like it's not even worth it. It seems now Freddy's plan is to kill as many people as he can beyond Elm Street. But this isn't Springwood.
Every town has an Elm Street.
Okay, that's easily the best line in the movie and the comic, respectively. He begins his new nightmare raid on Tracy, flashing her back to her creepy father as she wails on him with a coffee pot. Wow, I thought it looked dumb in the movie, but you somehow matched it perfectly. He turns into Freddy, but Tracy kicks his ass quite easily, so he pisses off to go torment Doc.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but nothing will ever kill me. First, they tried burning me. Then they tried burying me. They even tried holy water, but I just keep on ticking.
I was also killed by the power of love in part 2, but I think it's best that we all just act like that didn't really happen. Doc rips off a bit of Freddy's sweater and brings it into the real world, like Nancy did with his hat in part 1. So it seems that they can pull him into the real world and kill him when he's in mortal form, including Maggie having to put on the 3D glasses like in the film. But theoretically that actually would work because certain copies of issue 3 were actually sold with 3D glasses and were sold in 3D print, which was just as pointless and stupid in comic form as it was for the movie. Maggie enters Freddy's memories, and we get some of Freddy's early life. He was mocked by other kids and killed small animals as a child. He was beaten by his stepdad, Alice Cooper, before he eventually killed him by stabbing him in the eye, another thing that was trimmed down for the movie. Being burned by the angry mob of Springwood parents, being given the powers by the Dream Demons, and ultimately him killing Maggie's mother. Don't worry, baby. Mommy had to take her medicine for snooping in Daddy's special work. But you won't tell, will you? I won't tell.
But you did tell, didn't you? Now it's time for you to take your medicine.
After Freddy stretches his arms like he's Mr. Fantastic to try and get away, he's brought into the real world by Maggie. So now it's time for the final showdown between these two. It results in Freddy getting his ass handed to him until he's pinned against a wall. After teasing that Maggie might turn to the dark side after she picks up Freddy's glove, she slashes him and then puts a pipe bomb in his chest, kissing him on the cheek goodbye and saying, "Happy Father's Day." Considering the implications that were established between these two in Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash Nightmare Warriors, all I can say is, ew. So Freddy explodes, the Dream Demons flee, and we end on a title drop. Freddy's dead. That was Freddy's Dead, the comic, and much like the movie it's based on, yeah, it sucks. As for the story, I like the concept of them revealing more about Freddy's past, but it's just such a boring slog to get to that point. Most of the characters aren't interesting, there's not a lot of kills, though there is more blood in the comic than the movie, and most of the time, it feels like they're trying to do more of a mystery story with comedic elements rather than a horror, and compared to the other entries in the series, that's just lame. But most of this is criticism lobbied towards the movie. Does the comic do the story slightly better? Sort of. While the pacing is still a little dull, it's a lot faster compared to the actual movie. It is kind of refreshing to see some different things from the film, like the few deleted scenes put back in and certain aspects played less comedic than the movie. You also don't have to deal with really goofy special effects this time around. That said, the artwork in these comics does come off as inconsistent. The first issue's art is just sloppy looking most of the time, and the third one's color saturation is just very bizarre, with certain colors popping and standing out in weird ways. The second issue's art, while flawed, is still the best looking of the three. While the story is slightly better than the actual movie, it's still not enough to make this one of the more memorable Nightmare sequels. Though surprisingly, this comic did get its own sequel with Nightmare on Elm Street: The Beginning, which only lasted 2 issues, mainly because Innovation Comics shut down in 1994. While it is slightly better than the movie, it's still not a very good comic. Not one of the worst I've ever reviewed, but just not that good. I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough.
Everybody's faking it, corruption rules the day.